while I was away, Julio Jones got traded. And, the star wide receiver was traded to the Tennessee Titans. And it's old news, but I was away, out of town. I was busy moving. And I guess really the truth is when I sat down at my desk after the fact, I got back from 6 days away. I sat down at my desk and looked at the trade details. Like I knew he got traded, but what did this team get for him, basically? And I looked at, I guess I couldn't believe what I saw, that to get Julio Jones, the Titans had to give up a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. And that's it. A second and a fourth. So the Atlanta Falcons got a 2022 second-round pick and a 2023 fourth-round pick. And the Tennessee Titans got not only Julio Jones, but they also got a 2023 sixth-round pick. And so I look at Julio Jones is 32 years old. It's an expensive contract he's on. So I get that, it's high risk, I guess, because you're trading for an expensive player who's older. But Julio Jones is incredibly talented, really good. And the fact that he had to be packaged together with a sixth-round pick to make the deal happen made me go, wow. Nobody values Julio Jones, apparently. So I looked at the trade and went, well, first of all, number one, good for Tennessee. Good for them. Their offense is now terrifying. I don't know how you defend them because they now have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones at wide receiver. Oh, yeah, by the way, they also have Derrick Henry at running back. You can't, if you stack the boxes, stop Derrick Henry and play man coverage, you got a problem. You can't defend them downfield on defense. So I guess the obvious winner of the Julio Jones trade, therefore, is the Titans quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. The dude is getting support. I'm really excited for him. He's better than people realize. I think what I love about Ryan Tannehill is his ability to make plays when it matters most. He's not flashy. His numbers aren't amazing, but he executes at a high level. He makes good decisions, and he's really good on third down. He's really good in the red zone. Ryan Tannehill's better than people. Maybe I should do a film analysis of Ryan Tannehill. That actually sounds kind of fun. And I'll have an open mind. That's my opinion of Ryan Tannehill. We'll see if the film backs it up. That's what I've seen in the many games I've watched him play. But I really wanted the Titans passing game to take a step forward and develop after watching last year. This move is it. Trading for Julio Jones, it's happening. I think, wow, okay. Tennessee's going to take a step forward on offense. They were already a playoff team. I felt like they needed to evolve their passing game. This is the move they needed to make it happen. That's wonderful. Now, here's the loser of the trade, in my opinion. I think it's the Colts, really, but it's also the Colts and maybe the Ravens, where you have a situation where, again, I understand. I've said it before. I'll repeat it now. Julio Jones is 32 years old. He's expensive. But I really wanted the Colts to make a move and go get Julio Jones. And I was very disappointed that they didn't make that happen. He's ridiculously good. And if you're a team that's on the cusp of a Super Bowl, you're close, Julio Jones would push you over the top and get you over the edge. And the Colts have a quarterback, Carson Wentz, who's coming off the worst year of his career, who needs all the help he can possibly get. He's got a lot of support already in Indy. I was like, man, you add Julio Jones to that Indianapolis Colts offense, oh my gosh. They didn't make the move. Here's the thing, though. When I saw that price, a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick, and then, in fact, the Falcons had to package a sixth-round pick just to make the trade happen. They're like, we got to give Tennessee a pick, too. We're not just two fourths and a second and a fourth. It's also a sixth-round pick with Julio Jones to make it happen. It tells me that clearly this was the best offer. Atlanta had a hard time getting rid of Julio. And I found that surprising, just that 32 NFL teams, and there was only some that could actually afford him, but there weren't more teams that made a better offer to get Julio Jones. And now part of that's like, for example, the 49ers didn't make sense. They could afford him. People like the 49ers should make a move for Julio Jones. And I was kind of like, I don't know why they would do that. They're not as close to a Super Bowl as a team like Baltimore or Indianapolis. But why didn't the Colts make this move? Why did they, in fact, allow Tennessee to make it? And I know the Colts have a first or second round pick tied up in the Carson Wentz trade. It's a conditional pick where if he does really well, then Indy has to send a first round pick to Philly. And I think Carson is going to do well, and I think the Colts are going to have to send a first-round pick to Philly. But all Julio cost was a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. You're telling me Indy couldn't make that happen? And no one can say, well, the Falcons didn't want to send him to Indianapolis because they're not in their conference. They're not in their division. In fact, the Colts and the Titans are in the same division. So I feel bad because I love the Colts GM, Chris Ballard, and I defer to him. He must know more than me. And it's not the end of the world that the Colts didn't make a move for Julio Jones. But it's a trade they could have made happen, and it feels like they left something on the table where if they come up short next year, we're going to look back and go, might they have been better with Julio Jones? Because they would have been, easily. And again, here's the thing. Not only did Indianapolis not get Julio Jones, he also went to their rival, the Tennessee Titans, who they play twice a year. Maybe the Colts might play Julio Jones 3 times next year if the Colts and the Titans both make the playoffs and they play each other. So, man, you can easily argue that Tennessee, after making the playoffs 2 years in a row, are closer, minimum to, I think it's only 2, because I think they made the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill 2 years ago. They beat the Ravens, then last year they lost to the Ravens. But my point is, they're a playoff team who's now another step closer to a Super Bowl. And so not only did the Colts not get Julio, he ended up on their division rival. If Julio Jones went to San Francisco, I would be less worried about the Colts losing this trade. I'd say, well, okay, but now they still don't have to compete with Julio Jones. But to not get him and have to play him multiple times in your division, that's where it's like, oh, it's a double-edged, it's a double-edged sword. It's not good. And so the other team I thought I really wanted to make a move, I'm not as critical, but I really wanted the Baltimore Ravens to make a move for Julio Jones. I mean, the Ravens have other problems to solve, but their offense is awesome. And I wanted to see Julio Jones catch the ball from Lamar Jackson. I'm like, Lamar Jackson and Julio, that would be a really, really fun dynamic. And now the Ravens do have 2 young receivers, Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman, the former first-round pick. Plus he added, Sammy Watkins. They have Mark Andrews at tight end. But last year watching Baltimore, the consensus was, for me, their passing game needs to take a step forward. And part of that is Lamar Jackson, their quarterback, needs to take a step forward. And Julio Jones would have helped make that happen. And the fact that they didn't do that is weird to me. And I go, that's a missed opportunity. That's unfortunate that didn't happen. And so, I wanted more from Lamar. The Colts are trying to revitalize Carson Wentz's career. Julio helps both quarterbacks. And the fact that the Ravens and the Colts didn't make a move for Julio, it's worth asking, where was Baltimore? It's worth asking, why didn't the Colts make this trade? Why did they allow their division rival to make the trade instead? It's just, I don't know. Now, I will say, of all the teams that Julio could have gone to, because there were only a handful of teams that could actually afford him, of all the teams he could have gone to, Julio ended up on the team that needed him the most. It's a great fit. Tennessee needs to have a better passing game, and now they will. They have. I like Ryan Tannehill, but I want to see a step forward. They run the ball really well, but there were times I'm like, you're kind of a one-trick pony. Now, again, I go back to, how do you defend Tennessee? You can't stack the box, because if you do, they can now beat you vertically in man-to-man coverage. So good luck with any defense playing against Tennessee. And the Titans played the Colts 2 times this year. And the Ravens might play the Titans. They played them 2 years in a row in the playoffs, so might get that game again. And I just hope that if the season comes to an end and the Ravens and Indy come up short, I hope they don't regret not making a move for Julio Jones. If they're close and they don't win a Super Bowl and they feel like they left everything on the table, I'd say there's one more thing you could have done. You could have traded for Julio Jones. But again, I feel like I'm overly critical here. I'm not trying to be. I love Chris Ballard. I think that I'm excited to watch both Baltimore and Indianapolis. It's not the end of the world. And the Titans were the best fit for Julio Jones. So I'm very happy for them. And I just couldn't help acknowledging that price seems very low. considering the impact Julio Jones can have. I sound silly because people are going to say, well, clearly he wasn't good. His team was so bad. But a team that's a receiver makes a small impact. If your team is awful and you make a small impact, that's not enough. But if your team is really good and you make a small impact, that's a Super Bowl. That's Percy Harvin on the Seattle Seahawks a couple years ago, where Percy Harvin did almost nothing, and then in the Super Bowl was phenomenal. And you're like, oh, he's making play after play after play. A guy like that can put you over the top when you. That's the difference between an AFC championship and a Super Bowl. Is one player like that who can make key plays in critical moments. And I think Julio is going to be a lot more than just a guy who makes a couple plays next year. He's going to be a big focal point of the Titans offense. And so I just want to say, I think the price was really low. I'm surprised no one made a move for him. And I'm wondering if it's going to come back to haunt Baltimore or Indianapolis.